Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's National CyberWatch Center webcast. As a courtesy to others, we would like to ask that you keep your microphone muted during the presentation. If you're using your phone for the audio connection, you can press *6 to mute and unmute. Today's webcast is titled The Importance of Cyber Intelligence in Law and Criminal Justice. Your presenter today is Roy Zure, CEO and President of Cybin. Roy, thank you for joining us today, and you're all set to share your screen.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I will share my screen in a second. Okay, so you should see my screen. So let's start first about a short introduction. My name is Roy, I'm the CEO of Cybin. We are a cybersecurity and cyber intelligence education company. This webinar will not be about Cybin, but will be totally educational webinar. My background is, I'm coming from Israel, even though now I'm based in the US. I served for about a decade in the Israeli cyber forces, working with local law enforcement agencies, companies, and also US agencies, including the FBI, NSA, the National Counterterrorism Center, and others. A few years ago, when I established Cybin, we opened branches in the US and in Israel and some other locations. And today we are developing education programs, solutions, training with both higher education, government agencies, and companies. And today we're going to talk about the importance of cyber intelligence in the context of law and criminal justice and law enforcement. And to begin, I want to start saying why the world, or the world as we know it, is actually coming to an end, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but technological progress has always been part of human life, but we are now at a verge of a very big change in the entire industry and technology. And this is not going to be the focus of the presentation today, but you can feel it today, where technological changes become more, let's say, between every big change, we have less and less time, and things are getting much more connected. So when we think about, for example, the concept of Internet of Things, we are at a time where connectivity become a big thing. And when I say connectivity, is that not only is our computer connected to the internet, but also our phones, our cars, our apartments, our house, different electric tools are connected. And this is a situation where all of these connected devices are actually access points to the internet. So they can create some threats, and they can also create opportunities for us. What I mean is that every one of these devices, when it's an access point, then hackers and criminals and government-led organizations can use the fact that these devices connected to get into your companies, organizations, government facilities. But also because these devices generate data, sometimes collect data, generate data. So there is much more data out there that we can analyze, that we can collect. And for legal proceedings, for law enforcement agencies, for criminal justice, this is a very big opportunity. And I will give you very practical examples today. This is just the introduction. Now, when we think about threats, in the threat space, we have government-led players like the Russian and Chinese. And we just recently had really a case where we identified Russian planned attack against the US power grid, something that they're already doing in Ukraine for quite a lot of time. And the concept of cyber warfare, where countries are using cyber as a way to attack other countries, becomes a very big problem. And even the US Director of National Intelligence says that this is the biggest problem on the United States, and that the United States is actually under attack. Now, it's not just from government-led groups. We also have cyber criminals. So today we are talking about $500, $600 billion annually in damage. And this expected to grow maybe up to 6 trillion in the next 4 or 5 years. So we are talking about more than millions of attacks every month around the world, and many of them are not even known by the organizations. So this is the threat space. But actually, our presentation today will not be a typical presentation about the threats in the cyberspace, but more about the opportunities. Because the cyberspace, as it grows and as more and more devices are connected, as I mentioned, we also have more opportunities to find data out there that is relevant to us, either in the context of analyzing big data, which won't be the focus of our discussion today, but also how to reach data, collect it, analyze it in small scale, and use it for investigations, use it for due diligence, use it for other purposes. Now, I know that in our webinar today, there is a mix of practitioners, industry experts, but also educators, whether professors, instructors, and others. So the reason I'm saying it is that it is important to think about it from both perspectives. One, how practitioners can use cyber intelligence to improve their business and improve their practice. But also, I mean, I'm talking about both private practitioners, but also law enforcement agencies, etc. But also, how can we integrate it into our law degrees, criminal justice degrees, other programs that to make our students better in thinking about law and thinking about criminal justice from a different perspective. Now, I know we have some questions, and I will answer questions towards the end of this presentation. So when we think about cyber intelligence, we actually think about a wide range of opportunities. We think about search, how to search better, how to find information better. We think about profiling, how to identify a specific target, whether it's a person, a company, organization, and do a deep web profiling of this entity. Find all the information that is relevant for us. We can talk about digital forensics. For example, what about metadata behind documents, behind pictures, like the data behind the data? We can talk about hidden data, data that doesn't show up in our search online, but it's out there and we can reach it in legitimate ways, but we just need to know what are the ways and what are the tools to do that. We can talk about trend analysis. So how can we analyze aggregated data, like big amount of data, geolocation, and of course the dark web. All of these we will cover today in this presentation. So I want to start with give you an example of a specific story that happened a while ago that I was involved in helping the Israeli Bar Association, for example, in doing some legal investigation based on cyber intelligence. So this is one story, and I'll use at least 3 real stories in this presentation to make you understand how to use the concept I'm going to teach. So the case there was quite simple. There was a website, a fake website, that actually published a lot of fake information about lawyers in Israel. So there was a case of defamation, and the Israeli Bar Association decided to place a lawsuit against the owner of the website. The problem is that they didn't know who's the owner, and the name of the owner or his email address or even his real phone number didn't appear in the website. And they didn't really know what to do, so they asked me, back then I worked as an advisor also in the Israeli parliament and for some other Israeli agencies. And they said, hey, can you show us what can we do? So I'm going to show you an example. That's a really basic one, and then we'll move to something more advanced. So I told them, okay, we have a website. When we have a website, we can use something that is called the registrar of websites, like Whois. So we can type every website in the world or IP address and see who's behind this website. Because when somebody is was paying or buying a domain, they need to register. Now they can hide their name, but most people are not doing it because they need to pay extra charge and they don't think about it. So here we had a name. His name was Itzhak Sabag. It's like an Israeli name. And this guy was actually the owner of the website. And he actually provided we see his name, we see he's associated with like 17 other domains, and he also provided his address here. So we checked the address, but unfortunately he provided fake address because we checked and this is just like a place in another country, in Estonia. So what we did is we used another tool, and all the tools I'm going to use today and all the methods are simple open source intelligence. So there is no registration needed or any payment for tools. You don't need to be top-notch investigators to do that. That's something that you can do while you're sitting in your office, whether you're law enforcement, lawyers, or even professor of law and criminal justice. So I tell them, okay, if we couldn't find the address and real phone number, but we have at least his email from the name here, then we can do reverse Wiz lookup. So we can type the email and see what other websites are associated with him. As you saw here, we had like 17 other domains. So we had like 17 other websites that are related to this person. By the way, by doing this, we found out that he is involved in other criminal activities because he had been doing the same fake websites about other positions, not just against lawyers, but also against medical doctors and others. He had like a financial model of making fake websites with fake information and then making people pay him to remove this information. And he did it in really large scale, like for tens of thousands of lawyers and doctors in Israel. And nobody could reach him. Nobody knew who this guy is. And the police didn't really got involved in it for some reason. So we did the reverse Wiz lookup. We used the email address. And by using the email address, we find other websites. One of the websites was legitimate website. I mean, he had a lot of fake activity, but one was actually his real business. So we had a real website. We can go and use another tool that's called the Wayback Machine that shows us like the history of a specific website. So a lot of times, think about it like a due diligence process or investigation, and you want to see how the website looked like in the past, because maybe they changed it, maybe they changed it right before like a legal proceeding or anything, or before an investigation you did. So you can use the Wayback Machine and see the history of the website. And also you can save the page as it is today. So actually what it does, it will download the entire website to this type of search engine that shows you the past. So by looking at the past, I could see information that this guy posted on his real website in the past. And from this information, I could find his real home address and office address, as well as his phone number. So now we have address, we have someone, we have a name, we know who this guy is, so we can start the procedure. However, they wanted to reach out to him directly, and when we checked, this guy actually left the country, left Israel back then. We didn't know if he left for a long time or a vacation, but he wasn't in the country. So the next thing we did is that we looked for this guy in social media, and we find some pictures he uploaded. So the interesting part was that he didn't mention where he is, but from one of the pictures he uploaded, we could use the metadata of the picture, because people who are taking pictures with their smartphones, which is 99% of people today, actually forget a lot of time that the smartphone attach a location, a GPS location to the photo. So from the photo, we could find out that he's in the Phuket Island in Thailand. And once we had a location, he was like at the Sheraton Resort. So we understood he's in vacation. Then we could mark the area where he is and do what we call reverse geolocation. Find other activities that he may be using, like other social media accounts that we didn't have. And we did find out some more information. And then we can track and create what we call like alert notification. So instead of us looking all the time for things about a specific target, we create some alert. And now, whenever this guy will appear in a specific location and will mention something, or whenever something in a specific website will be different, then we'll get a notification. It's like making like Google alerts instead of just refreshing the search query. And we got really like a ping, like an update that he is moving by the fact that he posted something in social media in a different location. And from there, next time we find out that he got back to Israel because he posted something and we identified it. And then we reported him to the police. They arrested him, and then he was just, by arresting him, we find out that he was involved in a lot of other criminal cases in Israel, and now this guy is in prison. I give you another example, and then I'll go more to the strategic level, because every example integrates different skills of cyber intelligence. Another example, I was asked by one of the law enforcement agencies in the United States to present a way to identify individuals that are connected to terror organizations. How can we find it without, but the question here was not whether a specific individual is connected or not. That will be profiling of a specific person. In this case, the issue was, how can we find out about people we don't really know about? I mean, we don't really know if there are any people like this, and we want to find out if they exist, and if they exist, where are they? So I want to show you an example of what we did. But this example, I used another project I did in Europe for this example, because I couldn't really use the real names in the United States. So I will demonstrate it on the United States, but the real case happened in another country. So the first question was, give us a creative way to find connections to terrorism, and to ISIS specifically, or ISIL, or Daesh, or whatever you call it. So the Islamic State organization. And what I suggested was this. I said, you know what, let's have an assumption. And my assumption is, back then ISIS were broadcasting live from different locations in the Middle East, including on Facebook. They were investing quite a lot in marketing to recruit new people in Europe and the United States. And what I said is this: let's find a location in which, or I mean, when I say location, I mean address, or one building, in which we know that somebody is constantly watching all the ISIS videos. Because I suspected that if they have like some kind of local office somewhere, they will be watching, or at least they will have a screen or something that always watching and listening to all the ISIS broadcasts from their center. And we did it by using actually Facebook, because not many people know, but when people are watching live video on Facebook, we can actually extract, and this is something that is easy to do, and we don't need to do anything illegal to do it. It is easy to extract all the location of all the viewers of the video. And again, I'm not going to show how right now, but it's not really complicated. So when you have a specific video, you can find locations of all the people watching it at a specific time. So if you take all the ISIS videos from like 2 weeks, and then you find a specific location that watched all of them, or 90% of them. And then we find the location. Again, the location was not really in New York in our story, but let's say it was in New York. We had a specific location, a specific building. Once we had the building, we went to another open source resource, and we checked all the people in the building. Again, these are innocent people in this list, just a random place in New York. But the real story happened in another city, but the same case, the same concept. Now, after we find the names of the people there, we then go back and build, as I mentioned before, some kind of alert in the social media to say, okay, now let's see all these people in social media and analyze their activity. And in one of the accounts, we find out, and we look at all the pictures and everything, we downloaded it, we analyzed it, and we find that one of the accounts had a picture had a photo taken with this guy. I just took just his picture, the other guy is not there. This was, and by doing reverse image search, and when I'm talking about reverse image search, I'm talking about Google Images, not any like sophisticated technology. Well, I mean, it is sophisticated technology, but it's open source. we could find out that this individual is actually this individual you see in the pictures, which is Razi Nassereddin, who is involved in terror activity in the Middle East. So we can connect a specific account to a specific individual who was connected to terror, and this account was in a building that constantly watched these ISIS videos. Now, this is it doesn't mean that this guy is involved in terror. So we had to dig deeper into the account, and we did it by looking for more information about this individual we found, searching all their information in different open source databases, and also looking for other accounts they have in social media. Because a lot of time when you find someone on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, you have more than 500 social networks. I mean, some of them will not be described as social networks, but maybe like bloggers and other things. And a lot of people are using the same username for all their accounts. I'm not talking about password. So we checked for the specific username in other accounts, and we found it in another social media account. This user, and again, we are talking about a user of an individual in a suspicious location that has a picture taken, a photo taken with an individual connected to terrorism. Until now, we couldn't prove the connection. It's just an assumption. But now we find that in one of the other accounts of this individual, he was posting this string, if you can see, of letters and digits, the 13PCMH. Now, this seems totally random, but if you know something about the dark web, and by the end of this session you will know, you know that this exactly how dark web addresses, websites look like. Random string of digits and letters. You just add the suffix .onion instead of .com or .org. And once you go to the dark web, and I'll show you how, and you add the .onion, you finally identify that this address leads to a website that call people to fund the Islamic struggle and give them a way to fund it through Bitcoin. Like, this was actually a money laundering procedure through this investigation that, by the way, you see something that took several hours. I'm not talking about days. I'm talking about 1 day of investigation. We could find out a specific location, connected individual, connection to terrorism, and this happened in a European country. The same thing can be, I was asked to do in the United States, but I can't present it here today. So let's take a step back from stories and understand what we can do, or when we think about cyber intelligence, what we can do with it. And as you can understand, my focus today will not be about cyber threat intelligence, which is, let's say, a subtopic of cyber intelligence. It's one of my fields of expertise, but it's not going to be our main focus today. I will discuss about it, but it's not going to be our main focus. Our main focus is cyber intelligence in general and how we can use it for our own interests. And I showed you some examples. Now, let's talk about specific skills of cyber intelligence. Let's say we have these two pictures, okay? We have these two pictures, and maybe you recognize the picture on the left, where it was taken, and we have the picture on the right. And we don't know what's the connection between them, other than the fact then that they are both comes from the same investigation we have. So I want to find, I have a few questions. I had a few questions when I had this case. So one was, is there any connection between the pictures? Two, where the pictures were taken? And three, who are the people in the pictures? Okay, now I don't have any other information other than these pictures, and it was important for some other legal case. Now, the first thing I do is I'm using metadata of picture. So pictures taken by smartphones, for example, have what we call in the EXIF file, which is their metadata, have a lot of information about the type of camera, the location, the exact creation date, whether the photos were photoshopped or not, which is also really important in a lot of legal cases and investigations. So you take, I identified that the picture on the left was taken in Times Square, which is, I mean, you could find out without like checking the metadata. However, I knew that the other picture, the picture on the right, was taken in the University of Phoenix in Arizona. And by looking at the technical information, I could find out that both pictures, both photos, were taken by the same camera, by the same phone, which is important and relevant, which was important and relevant for our case. Now, in some cases, you will have a picture where there is no metadata. For example, pictures that people upload to Facebook, Facebook automatically removes the metadata. Probably Facebook has the metadata, but it removes it. And so if I'm just looking at the picture and checking the EXIF file, I couldn't find the location. In this case, for example, we can do what we call reverse image search. A very basic way, I guess most of you know it, but some of you maybe not. So I take this picture, I upload it to Google Images, so you can upload an image, and I search for the image, and Google gives the best guess. And in this case, the best guess was Hilton San Francisco Union Square, and it was exactly the location. So I had a picture that I want to know where it was taken, and now I have the location. Now, once I have the location, I'm going to the street view, and I have the street view, which is basic. However, a lot of people don't know that when you have street view, you can also look at the past. So if you see the box on the top left side, you can see street view February 2017. If you click there, you can look at all the previous street views that the Google camera took. So then I can look at how this place was like a year before, and I needed that because I wanted to know who was there. Now, yeah, I can reach out to find out according to records at the city hall or going to the police, but here I have a easy tool that I can look at what shops were there and whether this shop was in this time, and it helped me in the investigation. Going back to the pictures, so I know where they were taken. I know that they are from the same person that took the picture. And now the question is, who is this guy? The guy on the right. Now, if I take this picture and I will do search by image, I couldn't find anything because Google doesn't know what I want to find. But if I'll cut the picture and just search for this guy, then in this case, Google told me, well, this guy is probably Gary Clement. And then I click on it and I see the background of this guy, Gary, and from the website. And we'll get back to the Gary, but it helps us to get more information about this ongoing investigation. Just if we want to stay for another minute on the concept of reverse search, we can also search for like stolen goods. So for example, there was some diamond ring that somebody offered to sell it on eBay, right? And I think it was on eBay. Anyway, once you do reverse search on the diamond ring, you can actually find out that this diamond ring was stolen, and you can see more information about it because it's the same asset, the same stolen goods. So going back to this guy, Gary, we can see that Gary is working, was back then leading an organization called ACFCS, Association of Certified Financial Crime Specialists. So first, now we have much more information about an unknown picture just by checking the metadata and search by image. Now, once we have all this information, I'm going to the ACFCS website, and I can look through the Wayback Machine, as I said before. I can look how this website looked in the past, when Gary started there, some more information about previous employers or not employers, sorry, employees or team members, and I can learn a lot about this organization. Now, going back to the Whois tool that I mentioned before, I can see that the person who registered the website of ACFCS is working with Barbary. By the way, at Cybint, we are part of the Barbary group, so they allowed me to use this example. So now we know that ACFCS is actually connected to Barbary because the same IT manager registered both of the websites. Now, in some cases, that's not really adding any value, because if there are companies that are subsidiaries or something like this, we'll know about it. But sometimes there are companies that are not directly connected. They can be sister companies or not connected at all, but they have some one owner or shared domain that we don't really know about. But just by checking the who is the connection, we can find out that they are connected, which an example like this. So we find out about the guy, Mark Kaplan, the same IT director of Barbary is the same IT director probably of this ACFCS. Now, once we have his name, we can do reverse who is lookup and look for other domains that he registered. Now, why it is important? It is important because it allows us also to see the future. And I will explain, because it sounds weird. So a lot of companies or organizations, when they decide about some strategic move, let's say to buy another organization or to open a new branch or to launch a new product, sometimes they buy the domain before they launch the real project, sometimes months before, or they thinking about it's part of their strategy and they're not sure about it. So just by doing reverse whois on the specific register, I can see all the websites that are under his or her name. So when I check my name or my email, my private one, I can see other websites that are connected to me, and I can learn, for example, about things I plan to do. So that's an example of how to use metadata. But there are so many examples. That's really just the tip of the iceberg. Now, what about Wikipedia? Wikipedia sounds like a boring resource for investigation because it's an open source investigation. However, there are some features in Wikipedia that provides us much more information than we think. For example, what we call view history and talk. Because when there is a specific Wikipedia page, any change that ever was conducted on this page, whether it was some employee that didn't like the company or some competitor that wanted to post something, and even if this information was deleted from the page, it's still there in the view history. So a lot of times what I recommend is when you check a specific company, let's say in due diligence, you go back and you look at things that they or someone deleted. In this case, again, I'm using the Barbary example because they gave me permission. I'm taking the Barbary page in the Wikipedia, and I'm checking previous and current changes, and I'm looking for big deletion of content. And then I found out, for example, 2012, somebody deleted like 7,000 notes. And then I can see what was deleted. And I see that this is information about a lawsuit, this and that, and somebody, now maybe they had some like arrangement, like agreement or settlement, and they decided both sides to remove it, and I can't find information about it, but it is important for me for my due diligence process. Or maybe, and then I can go from history, I can go to the talk section, and I can look why it was removed, etc. And actually, there is a lot of information in the talk section and history section, because a lot of people are involved in can change a specific page, and most of the changes will not be accepted because there are not enough resources to back the information. But you know what? Sometimes rumors are true. You just can't prove them. But for me, when I'm doing investigations or due diligence, I also want to know about the rumors. And this is something that is really helpful even by using Wikipedia. Another really interesting tool is called Lumen. Now, maybe you know that in Europe, for example, in the European Union, there is the right to be forgotten. So an individual or a company can reach out to Google and say, hey, please delete the information about me because this is false, or because this is something that there have justifications. I don't want to get into it right now. So in this case, Google Google gets hundreds of thousands of requests every year, by the way. even maybe more than 1 million. I mean, last time I checked, it was like 700,000. It was like last year. I don't know how many this year. And now with the GDPR and everything, I guess it just becomes bigger. Now, Google can really remove the data, right? Google is just a search engine, not just, but Google is a search engine. So if the data is in a specific website, then Google can just delete the data. What Google does is just, it deletes the connection between your name, the search string, to this piece of data. So if I search for my name, Roy Zur, and I had some, I don't know, some bad information about me, now it's gone, but it's still there. And what Google does, it provides this information. I don't know if directly or Lumen get it, but it provides all the legal requests of removal of data to another database called Lumen. So you can't find information from Lumen in Google, but if you go directly to this concept that's called Lumen database, you will find actually information and a lot of requests to remove information. So another concept, that's the concept I call hidden data. There are a lot of other types of hidden data, but these are really the basic examples. Another example of using intelligence or cyber intelligence in law is by searching for aggregated data. So Google Trends, for example, gives you information about search strings, but not your search strings, but everyone's search strings. So you can search for a specific term and see how it acted in a specific time, in a specific location, even by a specific state, even by a specific city. So you can measure whether, let's say, and we had a case like this, a specific, it was like in intellectual property. You say, no, somebody claims that a specific trademark is a well-known trademark in another country. Now you can prove how many people really looking for the term, know the term in the country, just by using the concept of Google Trends. And you can even measure it by, you can also compare between two trends or two brands. And it's really useful in some kind of investigation or legal cases where nobody did a real research about it, but you can just use all the aggregated data in Google that Google provides you access to come up with conclusions about, in this case, the blue states and red states is definitely not connected to Republican and Democrats. This is just, Google always present when you compare two terms in blue and red, and if you compare more terms in more colors. So it's just random, but in this case, we checked like two competitors and see, for example, where a specific term is being searched more than another term, etc. Another thing is you can use, if you want to look at aggregated data about websites, you probably know, or some of you probably know, that when you have your own website, you can use like data analytics, like Google Analytics. So you can check, how many people visited your websites, etc. But what about other people's websites? What if a company claims that they have this and that visitors from these countries during discussions or during legal cases or even due diligence, and they present some information and you don't know if it's false or correct? Then there are tools like this one is called SimilarWeb, that shows you just type a specific website and you get all the visits of the website by month. There is a paid version for it, but that's the free version. You can also see level of engagement. You see how many, the top referring sites, the traffic sources, the type of countries. And for those of you who haven't, that joined us late, as I said in the beginning, these are all basic methods and methodologies and open source free tools that can be used. So that's an example of the concept of aggregated data. Now, another concept that I mentioned before is about profiling. So let's say I want to do profiling of a specific individual. In this case, I chose a guy named Stephen Fredette. He's the CEO of Barbary, the same company. Again, I'm using the company for my examples. So if I want to know more about the person, first I can go to different type of personal databases like People, like Spokeo, And from these, I can find phone numbers, addresses, family members, places, all free, all open sources. Another thing I can use is something that's called Corp Wiki or Corporation Wiki. And there is something else that's called Market Visual. Both of them are interesting tools that provide us in a visual way the connections, the business connections of a specific individual or a country. And I checked it in the United States, actually, most businessmen, at least senior businessmen I checked, are there, and you can see it easily. I think it aggregates data from not just from LinkedIn, but from different resources. So here I can see all this connections, network of this individual, Stephen Fredette, and I can also expand the search. For example, I see the connection of Stephen Fredette to a specific private equity called Leeds Equity Partners. And then I expand the search of Leeds Equity Partners, and I want to see the private people, how they are connected to other companies of this individual. So it helps me to do this individual profiling. I mentioned before different open source databases. So Black Book Online, for example, is a great database. And then when I do the profiling, I can create an alert. As you can see here, I can create like every time that the word Stephen Fredette or Steve Fredette or Barbary or, for example, is being mentioned, send me an email, do it like once a day. That's easy to do in Google Alerts, and you can do all types of searches. There are other concepts of cyber intelligence that are connected to what we call geolocation. For example, I'll give you an example. Let's say there was a crime in a specific location, and I want to know more about this crime. For example, I want to find witnesses, or I want to find whether there are security cameras there, or whatever information I want to find. And of course, everything I mean, I can always work directly with some law enforcement agencies, but sometimes also the law enforcement agencies, they don't have all the information, or they need a warrant, or there are some different problems, issues that prevents me from moving forward with my investigation. So, for example, one tool is I can use like a crime report. There is an online website that provides a lot of crime reports of different people in different locations. So I can find like a crime report and then match it to another online source that provides me information about all the known security cameras in a specific location. Of course, there are some places that there is more data about them. So this is an example, I think, from Boston. But there are some places that there is less information. Again, to check it takes probably a minute, and it can really help us. Now, after we have the information about location and maybe security cameras, I can do what we call like a reverse, as I mentioned before, reverse geolocation. So I'm using like reverse geolocation and check all the social media activity that happened there. For example, tell me all the tweets and Instagram photos that were uploaded yesterday in the Boston area between 5 to 6. These are open source tools. And then you can see all these tweets and Instagram photos, of course, those that had some kind of like a location tag on them. And maybe one of them tweeted or said something about an event that occurred. And there are eyewitnesses, you know. Maybe somebody took a picture that is not related, but in the background, you can see something that is relevant. And you can even, in these tools, you can even measure like what kind of words it's been using. This case was a random case, so you can see words like museum in Boston and some just random word. But what if it was like a bomb or attack, and like you understand a specific location and you can find out what happened in a specific location. You know, and this is the concept of reverse geolocation. Sometimes it's not about reverse geolocation. You have a specific individual, you want to prove that this individual was in a specific location or wasn't. And of course, without getting a warrant or without getting access to their real GPS locations, a lot of people are not really aware of the fact that their locations are being taken by different social media they're using. So I just chose a random Twitter account, really random, and saw that I can see, for example, in this Twitter account is a person from, I think, Eastern Europe. So I can see first that he visited in the past in the United States. I see locations, and I see what he tweeted when he was in a specific location. Also by the amount of tweets and I can also understand more or less, in this case maybe less because he's not really tweeting a lot. I can understand his, let's say, working hours. I think even somebody posted, like one of the newspapers posted something like this about President Trump a few months ago when they analyzed, according to his Twitter account, analyzed for like 10 years back, or not 10, but 5 years back when there was Twitter, analyze his like sleep hours, etc. Again, in the case of President Trump, maybe just for other purposes, but when we do it for investigations, that can be really useful. I'll give you another example of critical information that we can find through cyber intelligence, and this will be about the dark web, and it will be another 5 minutes, and then I'll wrap it up. I'll explain my view about, like, strategic view about cyber intelligence, and then I'll open it for questions for the last 10 minutes. So when we think about the dark web, first, the dark web is part of the internet. It means it's not really dark. I mean, some websites are, but it just means that to reach to a dark web website, you usually need to use a different browser than your regular browser, because dark web websites, most of them have the suffix .onion, and they are part of a network called Tor, the Onion Router Network. This was a network that was invented, by the way, developed, not invented, by the US military and some other organizations. It wasn't an illegal network. The purpose of this network is to allow people to have a more private, anonymous way to communicate online. Because when you're using Tor browser, your communication with a specific website, with a specific web server, is going through 3 different random IPs in the world and being encrypted. So it's like using it's not exactly like this, but it's like using 3 VPNs or something. Not exactly, but just so you can understand what I mean. And what can we find on the dark web? I'll give you some examples. So first, everyone can download Tor. Tor is legal, the Tor browser, and you can use Tor also to get to any website. But by using Tor, you can also get into the dark web websites. So what can we find there? First, we know that this is an example of data leakages in 2007, 2008. That's how the space of data leakage looked like in 2009 and then in 10. And that's how it looked like in 16, 17. So in 2016, 2017, you see that and of course now in 18, there are like billions of accounts out there. And when I say out there, it means that we can find them in the dark web. So another tool, for example, have I been pwned? I can check a specific email address and I see all the data leakages that this email address was involved in, including yourself, you can check. Now, if I see that something leaked, in most cases, it leaked to the dark web. So then in the dark web, I can find things like this marketplace. This one has been seized by the FBI, but it worked for like 2 years until then. I presented it at the conference at the DOJ in DC last year. And I also did a project with FBI Financial Crime Unit later on. And the FBI seized this website. But this website offered people like Amazon, offered to buy services and goods. But in this case, the services and goods are fraud, drugs, counterfeit items, and others. So if I click fraud, I can choose bank drops. From bank drop, I see hackers just stole accounts and upload their accounts. For example, Wells Fargo accounts. I can click on it and I see the hacker uploaded like a batch of thousands of accounts with money in them. And you see that the vendor has like trust level and vendor level and even feedback and refund policy, and they are selling stolen goods. I mean, they are selling stolen accounts of banks. Now, people are buying it, and they are actually, the reason they are buying it is if a hacker steals like 10,000 accounts, they don't want to use them, they want to sell them. So if the account has, let's say on average, there is $1,000 in the account, you sell them in $100, and then you, the big fish, the hacker, disguise yourself behind all these 1,000 people that buy these accounts and use them. I mean, they use them by, for example, buying cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and others, and then it's a really fast money laundering process. So this market has been seized. However, and also if you remember, the first known market was the Silk Road. I don't want to get into it right now. It's really old and it was mainly for drugs. But there are still active markets right now. Dream Market is working for like 5 years now and doing something similar to Alphabet. Also, Wall Street Market. It's not the real Wall Street, right? I mean, these are all offering stolen goods online, et cetera, and you can find in the dark web also stolen credit cards and fake credit cards and fake passports and drugs, and also services like hacking services, including grades change and denial of service attacks against companies, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to summarize before I move into questions, if there are any questions. And I want to talk about it from do the summary from two point of views or two perspectives. One, from the academic training, education point of view, another from the practice point of view. So from the academic point of view, one of the things I'm doing, and I really believe in it, and I didn't mention it, but I'm also, I've been working as a cyber expert for a decade, but I'm also, and still working, but I'm also a lawyer and working with law enforcement agencies and law firms and financial institutions. And from the academic point of view, I really believe that this has to be, and this is just a small example, you're talking like for 45 minutes. This has to be part of either academic structure or hands-on training or legal clinics, or it has to be, and we are starting to work with some criminal justice and law schools and business schools to integrate these hands-on skills in cyber intelligence, because they're so critical for for the market, for the students, so they can understand more the theory, how these things work. If they're going to, if billions and trillions of dollars will be a part of cyber crimes, then they need to understand the space. And of course, government-led attacks, cyber warfare, etc. So, and this is from the, let's say, the educational point of view, but also from the academic point of view, we are talking about the practice point of view, the market, the industry. This is something that, yes, there are, you need to integrate more technologies and solutions to your companies and organizations. But what about let's call it the human mind, the human technology, the having your people with the relevant skills so they can ask the right questions by using the technology or by using external resources, understand how things really work behind, behind this concepts like dark web, cyber crimes, really understand what it means. We call it cyber literacy, really understand it, not just awareness. Awareness is like, don't do this. It's like do's and don'ts, that's it. But literacy is one step more. And this space of cyber intelligence is so wide and so interesting that it's not just the security part, it's not just how to protect yourself, but also how to be proactive, find information either about threats or about opportunities or investigations you have on the dark web. So I'll stop here, and we have some time for questions. So I'll get it back to you.
Awesome, Roy. So yeah, we have 3 questions here, and I'd like to remind everybody, if you do have any questions, go ahead and post them in the chat feature in Zoom, and make sure you send them to everyone. And we have a little bit of time to get to questions. So I've got 3 right now. So here they go. The first one is, if every country has the military capabilities for cyber war, wouldn't we, the United States, be also participating in the same activities as other countries?
So the answer is, of course. So, the United States is actually one of the leading countries in cyber warfare. I'm not saying that cyber warfare is necessarily a bad thing. War in general is probably a bad thing, but it's reality. And in this reality is the same as building stronger airplanes and bombs and missiles and even nuclear facilities. Yes, it is a necessity. What we are saying is that while the US You know what? Let me rephrase, because I don't want to get into sensitive information. But what I want to say is that right now, the US is the #1 target for these attacks. So even though the US is also using these tools and developing these tools, right now, other countries, especially, as you probably can assume, Russia and China, also North Korea, but in a smaller scale, Iran, are actually attacking, not preparing for the next war, but attacking at the moment, trying to get into, you know, the top secrets of the country, trying to have some what we call APT, Advanced Persistent Threat. It means like a secret agents, not really, but some tools that are hidden in your system, collect information, and can operate in a specific day and shut down the entire system or cause a lot of damage. To your question, yes, of course, the United States is also doing it. It's not about the good guys and the bad guys. If we are in the United States side, in this case, then we need to make sure that this country, the United States, will be as ready as possible for the next cyber warfare.
Okay, next question. How does the recently implemented GDPRs affect your ability to do what you demoed with Whois?
Okay, great question. So Whois is going to change their, so two things. One is that first, now that you register a domain, in the past you could register a domain, and then if you knew about it, you can ask for that your information will be removed. So that was in the past. Right now, when you register, let's say through GoDaddy or others, they'll tell you, hey, you can and you should disguise your information. So pay us like $7 extra per year and we'll remove this information. So right now, Whois is still active. It is, they are about to change their, the way they save the information about people. It is something that we expect to change in the near future. And then we will have other tools, maybe less, let's call them less official tools that are doing the same. But I can share with you some tools that I know that are doing almost the same with Whois, and probably will stay with us even with the GDPR.
Okay, and the final question I have, are you able to pinpoint the locations if they are using VPN?
Well, okay, so when you're using VPN or using Tor network, then you are actually, what you're doing is that you disguise your network, right, your IP, and also in this case, you disguise your location and you encrypt your data from your computer to the VPN server. However, if somebody is, for example, voluntarily adding a picture, even though they're using a VPN, if this picture has metadata with a specific location, or if they tag themselves in a social media or something like this, then the VPN, I mean, if they do it voluntarily, then the VPN won't change it. Now, of course, if this is something that you see the location only based on their IP, then the VPN will disrupt the information and you will have a fake information. So for example, I'm using a tool in my computer that allows me, even without a VPN, by the way, to change my location. I'm just when I'm going into some websites, I'm providing like fake location. So yes, it can change the information that that you see.
Okay, and we have one more question come in. This is from, let's see, who's this from? Simran.
Mm-hmm.
And he says he or she, recent college graduate that is interning as a cyber threat analyst. And they're asking, do you have any suggestions on how I may be able to fine tune my skills? Also, do you teach at any universities?
Right. Okay. So
Simran is a she. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned before, cyber threat intelligence is a field by itself, a subgroup or subfield of cyber intelligence. I would say that in cyber threat intelligence, there is a lot of content to cover. Also, there is several levels. From collection of information to associate the information to a specific threat, identify threat actors, So this is a field by itself, and I couldn't cover it today. What I would say is, there are some programs, both online and in several schools, that provide information about threat intelligence. Yes, we do teach, or it's more likely that we don't teach in university, but we provide universities training programs and content. We don't do directly training of individuals at Cybint, but if you reach out later, I can direct you to some other vendors or relevant training companies.
Okay. And Simran says, thank you.
Thank you.
And I notice I got time for one more. Chris H has his hand raised. Chris, I'm going to unmute your microphone and you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
We sure can. Go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. I'm pretty new to the industry myself, but I wanted to know, as a person who gets deeper into the industry, how would you suggest someone kind of socialize and conduct themselves in I guess the world, and like if you live in a major city, or if you live in an area where there's a lot going on, how would you suggest a person go about doing the work that you do and then still kind of remaining human, so to speak?
You mean the ethical part of
The ethical part, right?
Well, ethics is something that we need to take in consideration in every position. We are, when you work for the good guys, it can be, again, depends how you describe the good guys, but I'm always working only for who I think are the good guys. I will never help any criminal organization to conduct investigation, nor to hostile countries or organizations that I know that are using these tools and skills to do what I consider to be bad practice or other activities. However, if you would ask someone maybe in Russia, they will think that what I'm doing is bad because I'm helping the United States do stuff and Israel. So I would say it's really something really individual, really subjective to your, the way you see it. It's really a difficult question to say, but it is important to keep ethics in this position as well.
That's the last question we have. Roy, do you have any final comments?
No, thank you for everyone. If you have any follow-up questions, you can reach out directly to me or through the National CyberWatch. I guess you'll send me the questions. I'm happy to assist.
Awesome. Thank you, Roy, for the fascinating presentation. It was excellent. And thank you, everyone, for attending today. Our next scheduled webcast is September 27th, and the topic will be machine learning. We look forward to seeing everybody again then. Have a great afternoon.